Gypsy Rose has dozens of interviews out there with millions of views just in the last week, but not all those videos performed equally. Poor production, generic questions, and confusing crosstalk can make even the biggest interview a dud. So we're going to look at 5 interviews to see what you can learn as a podcast host and some mistakes to avoid. Plus, I'm going to show you how you can upload a piece of video content like an interview, use the AI show notes in Riverside to get a summary, takeaway, and chapter markers, and even create magic clips from this video content that was recorded externally. First up is one of the most impactful interviews that I saw with Gypsy Rose, and this is with ABC News. Now, ABC News has almost 16 million subscribers, and this video is hovering around 1 million views after just a few days. But one of the key takeaways from this interview, and we'll see contrasted in others, is asking good questions right up front at the video, especially for a platform like YouTube where you need to hook someone's attention quickly. Listen to one of our early questions.
Many people just can't understand why you didn't just get up and walk out of that wheelchair. You weren't sick.
This interview also does a great job of weaving those great questions in with context of what the story is about and who Gypsy Rose is. So if you've never heard her name before, you'll understand what's happening. They also talk about her trending on social media, which is relevant and brings in that younger demographic who probably saw her on TikTok first. And being ABC News, we do have great production value, good video and audio quality. This was a great interview asking good questions. Now, if I upload this video file to Riverside, I do get the summary talking about Gypsy Rose's life story and some of the takeaways that were key in this interview. You can see they address mental illness specifically, and you can even see the timestamps about when she started talking about her new husband and moving forward. You can even create magic clips from this interview and edit these in the Riverside editor to change the in and out points and add captions, and quickly share this interview on other formats like Reels, YouTube Shorts, or TikTok. Now, this second interview is from The View. The View channel has over 1 million subscribers and 652,000 views for this video after a few days. And while The View is a popular show, I found that having this many hosts asking questions, sometimes there was crosstalk, meaning one host talked over another, could make the interview a little hard to follow and distracting. Also, the opening question on The View compared to ABC News' question just isn't as strong.
You were released from prison just a week ago.
Yes, that is correct.
I mean, that's just, like yesterday.
Right.
You served 8 years of a 10-year sentence. Number one, how are you doing?
Later in the interview, they did get into more penetrating questions, asking about how doctors were convinced to do certain things, but it took a while to get there, and as with any YouTube video, retention drops over time, and so many viewers might not have even heard these questions. The View also didn't really address TikTok or her social media following, which is a huge part of her story right now. But during this interview, there was a great transition from one topic to another. Take a look.
So playing off your very existence and your instincts, she manipulated you from the day you were born. How did she convince doctors to do these things?
Re-emphasizing the guest's answer is a great way to solidify a point, and then you can transition to a new topic. So what we can learn from this is put some great questions right up front to hook your viewers. Make sure if you have multiple co-hosts or multiple people asking questions that you plan who's going to ask what and when, or who's doing follow-ups, to eliminate some of that crosstalk, or at least take it out in editing. You can see this interview uploaded to Riverside. We can generate some clips here and even generate the show notes with a single click. This happens with every Riverside recording. You can see because of the questions they asked on The View, we kind of have more general takeaways that we could have gotten from any other interview. The more general and unfocused the content and questions are, the more general the takeaways are going to be. Now, this next interview was from Entertainment Tonight. They have 6.4 million subscribers, and for that subscriber count compared to the other channels, with Gypsy Rose in the title, this is getting less views at 517,000. Now, this interview focused on Gypsy Rose and her new husband specifically, which is good to take a different angle on a topic that might be covered by a lot of news outlets. But the issue is we don't get any context on who Gypsy Rose is, her backstory, or why we should care. It would have served Entertainment Tonight to give a little more context at the beginning and throughout, maybe showing B-roll clips and a voiceover to let us know who Gypsy Rose is. If this is the first piece of content you come across with Gypsy Rose in the title, you're not really sure what's going on. There are also some weaker questions talking about her in-prison experience, like this one.
So I got to know, though, Gypsy, how many men wrote to you wanting to date you while you were in prison?
And there were some unique questions towards the end about reservations of having kids between the two of them.
What reservations, if any, do you have about having children someday after considering what you've experienced in your own childhood?
E.T. would have been better served with more context and a stronger hook at the beginning, asking some good questions and maybe even teasing an answer at the beginning. This next interview with E! News is actually a remote interview. It's one of the few that didn't have Gypsy Rose in studio with them, and even though E! News has 1.3 million subscribers, this video only has 49,000 views. Number one, I think the production value of this interview has a lot to do with it. You can see the shaky camera, and the husband is walking around in the background. Now, they probably didn't see him in the camera shot because he's not on camera, but you do see him in the mirror. This is a huge point. If you're doing interviews with remote guests, make sure that anything in the frame, be it a mirror or a window, that you reduce as many distractions as possible. That shaky camera definitely should have had a tripod or something else. This is also why if you're going to have a really big guest, it might be good to invest in a recording kit that you send out to make sure they're not going to have shaky footage and they're not going to have bad audio. E! News also didn't really open with a very strong question. Here's what they started with.
When you think of purchases, what was one of the first purchases that you made?
But a bad question isn't the end. This E! News interviewer actually had a great follow-up question that got Gypsy talking about her hopes for the future and in a slightly different way than other interviews had.
I know, and many others, your bucket list. You were in prison for quite some time. Since you were 23 years old and you're now 32 years old, what is on your bucket list to do now?
And again, that production value I think has a lot to do with the view count on this video. They probably should have recorded with Riverside, where you get local recordings, high quality video and audio from remote guests, and no internet blips or freezes will ever affect the video and audio quality. And edit the interview either in the Riverside editor or download those high quality files to edit in an external editor. And this last interview is actually a podcast. This is the Nick Val podcast, and with 133 subscribers, he actually managed to get a view count closer to those larger news outlets because he got a trending topic. You could see his other interviews, which average in the tens of thousands of views. This interview with Gypsy Rose is already at 312,000 after just 24 hours of being live on YouTube. Just to reiterate, getting on a trending topic or having a trending guest on your podcast is a great way to grow that audience and increase your view count, which will get you some subscribers as well. It did take a second for the podcast to warm up. There was some how you doing questions and how's your heart.
Gypsy, how is your heart?
How is my heart?
Yeah.
My heart is very full.
Definitely not the fast, hard-hitting questions that we saw from other news outlets, but they did get into more interesting topics, and because this is a podcast, you can be a little more casual than some of those high-paced news shows. And I think it's great that they brought her husband in later. This way they can actually talk to him specifically, and he doesn't have to sit there the whole time. But you'll notice when he first arrives, he's messing with his microphone a lot. And like a good podcast host and co-host, they actually help him adjust that microphone and get it situated perfectly. And you can see the host, Nick, start addressing Gypsy directly so they can focus on him and her while they fix the microphone on the husband. Great strategy there, getting it fixed off camera, and then the husband's set to go for the rest of the interview. Now, having a trending product or even a guest on your show is a great way to capitalize on that trend, but that's not always possible. You can still find ways to connect your video or podcast content to that trending idea and capitalize in that moment. Kind of like someone making a video analyzing interviews with Gypsy Rose, even if she's not here personally. And you can see with longer content like this, that's almost 2 hours, we get a lot more in the summary and the takeaways here in Riverside when we upload that video file, all the timestamps, which helps you organize things easily, and look at all the magic clips that are generated just from this one interview. Then you can go in and edit any of these to share on social media, tons of content for weeks to come. So are you trying to get that trending guest or talk about a topic that'll grow your audience? Well, we'd love to help. Subscribe to the channel. You can ask questions below this video. I'll answer those personally. Like the video. And we have tons of content on getting your video set up right, how to do interviews in high quality, and if you need any tips on gear like microphones and cameras, both for you and your remote guests, to make sure your interview looks and sounds great, I'll put a video right up here you could check out, or the links in the description. And if you want some interview tips, some good questions to ask, or how to make sure your guest looks and sounds the best possible, I'll put a video up here that'll give you those tips as well. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.